Hey everyone, it's Lisa Mears here. Thank you for joining me. Today, Simon Hurley has released two new Lunar Paste colors to his collection, and these colors are called Love Struck and Breakup Blue. And if you're not familiar with Lunar Paste, it is a creamy and very colorful paste with an opaque metallic shine. You can use it with stencils or directly to your cardstock with a palette knife or blending brush. And Lunar Paste goes on wet but dries permanently. In today's video, I will start off swatching the new colors of Lunar Paste, and then I'll show you 6 ways that I like to use Lunar Paste when I'm making my cards. And I'll make 5 cards today. So I do want to show you some new paper from scrapbook.com that is coming soon. This is mixed media paper. It comes in black and white, and it's perfect for using Lunar Paste. This is a smooth paper pad. It comes in an A2 size, 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, and it also comes in a larger pad that is 6 by 8 inches. And this paper is pretty thick. It's 400 GSMs. And it's perfect for all of your wet mediums, including if you do a lot of watercoloring. When I do watercoloring, I love using a smooth paper, and this paper is very smooth, both the white and the black. So I wish you guys can actually feel it. It's so smooth to the touch. So I'll be using a sheet of the white and black mixed media paper to swatch out my colors of Lunar Paste. So the first new color that I'm showing you is called Breakup Blue, and this is so pretty. It's almost like a blue and purple mix. It's a very light blue, and you can see how creamy this paste is. I'm going to go ahead and put some here on a palette knife and then just swipe it here on the white cardstock, and you can see how that looks on white. And using your palette knife, you can apply as much or as little as you want. So if you wanted some more dimension and texture, then you can add some more. But look how metallic and shiny that Lunar Paste is. I love this stuff. It's so creamy. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the black cardstock, and I want to point out that the color does not change between the two colors of cardstock that you use. So it doesn't matter what color cardstock you use, the color of Lunar Paste will always maintain its original color. So I was applying it pretty smooth with the palette knife, but I want to also show you that you can add texture if you wanted just to tap your palette knife. You can see the texture, and when it dries, it will dry just like that. Always clean your palette knife because you don't want to spread any of that blue color into the new color. So always make sure you clean it off with a paper towel and get all that color off so that you don't mix the colors. But before I show you the next new color, I do want to show you one other way you can apply your Lunar Paste with a ink blending tool here. I just dabbed it in the lid, took a little bit onto that foam tip, and I am just spreading it onto the cardstock. And you can get a really nice thin layer of Lunar Paste onto your cardstock this way. So you can just apply it just like you would any type of ink when you're using an ink blending tool like this. And you can see the difference in how thick you can get it with a palette knife versus how thin you can get it with an ink blending tool. Make sure you always clean off your foam on the ink blending tool. I just spray it here with some water and put it on a paper towel to get all that ink off. If you don't, it will dry and it will be really hard to use that same foam tip again. You can also just take that off of your brush and run it under the sink, which would probably be more efficient. Okay, let's look at the next color that Simon Hurley has released. This one is called Love Struck, and this one is also so pretty. I think they're all so pretty. I just love that metallic shine. But it's kind of like a mix between a red and a pink. It is so pretty. This is perfect for Valentine's Day coming up, but you can see that it kind of has a pinkish tint, and it's absolutely gorgeous. So Simon Hurley also has a line of ink pads, and these two colors are also colors that he has in his ink pads. So if you happen to have those ink pads, I would imagine that the colors are very similar, and you can use these in conjunction with the ink pads. So there is the Love Struck swatched out on black and on white cardstock. So before I get to my cards, I just want to mention a little while ago I did show you here on my YouTube channel when Simon Hurley came out with his line of Solar Paste. And I wanted to bring them out just to show you the difference between the Solar Paste and the Lunar Paste. There's a total of 6 colors of Solar Paste, but I wanted to bring out the ones that closely match the colors of Lunar Paste that I have here, which is the Cross My Heart and the Beluga. So here you can see the Breakup Blue Lunar Paste on the left and the Beluga Solar Paste on the right. And I want to point out that the Solar Paste is a creamy white paste that has a metallic color shift when it hits the light. The Solar Paste has an intense metallic shine when it's applied to the black cardstock. So you can see how pretty that is. But when it's applied to the white cardstock, it's more subtle. So you can see that it's more subtle there on the white. You can even add your reinkers to the Solar Paste to add a beautiful metallic shine to them and then use them on the white cardstock. And then here I have the Cross My Heart Solar Paste. And then I also have the Love Struck Lunar Paste there on the right. So I just want to show you this Solar Paste on the black cardstock. You can see it does go on white, but it will dry with a metallic red color, which is so pretty on that black cardstock. And then I'll show you here on the white cardstock. So it's more subtle on the white. So as I mentioned earlier, there are 6 colors of Solar Paste, but there are a lot of colors of Lunar Paste that are available. I think I counted about 26 colors, and now he's adding these additional colors. So there are lots of colors to choose from. If you're interested in seeing my video where I used the Solar Paste in depth and made several cards, I will link it here at the top right corner of this video and in the description box below. So here I just wanted to show you what that Solar Paste looked like when dry. You can see more of that red coming out on that black cardstock. And then here the blue one, you can see how pretty and metallic that is on that black cardstock. Okay, let's look at some of my favorite ways to use Lunar Paste. And we're going to start out by applying it directly to white cardstock with your stencils. Now this stencil is very thin. You can see all of those thin lines. This is the Rose Bloom stencil from scrapbook.com. So I did apply some pixie spray off camera to the back of the stencil and then added it to my cardstock. The pixie spray is just a light tack adhesive that will make sure that the stencil really sticks down to the cardstock, but it will not rip the cardstock when it comes off. And it just helps keep it down so that when you're adding these inks or pastes, everything just stays down. Okay, so here I'm using a blending tool, and I'm just taking a little bit of the Breakup Blue Lunar Paste and applying it to the center of all of those roses. Next, I'm coming in with the Love Struck Lunar Paste, and I'm just adding it to the outside petals of all of those roses. So I'm using both colors for this stencil and just using an ink blending tool to get a little bit of the Lunar Paste on my foam on the bottom of the ink blending tool, and then rubbing it just like I would do inks from an ink pad and applying them to a stencil that way. So I ran out of paste on the lid of my Breakup Blue Lunar Paste, so I just took a palette knife, dipped it in the Lunar Paste, and put it directly on to the foam. So now that I've finished adding the Lunar Paste through my stencil, I'll go ahead and remove the stencil. And because I used an ink blending tool to apply the Lunar Paste, I only applied a very thin layer, and this will dry pretty quickly. So depending on how much Lunar Paste you apply will depend on how long it takes for it to dry. So if you were to take it on a palette knife and put it directly to the cardstock and apply a pretty thick layer, it would take longer to dry than it would using this ink blending tool where I'm just applying a very thin layer. So here I want to show you the difference between what that stencil looks like with the white cardstock versus the black cardstock. So I'm just doing the same thing as I did with the first stenciled background and doing it here with the black heavyweight cardstock. So applying the Breakup blue to the center of those rose blooms, and then I'm applying the Love Struck to the petals along the outside. So I'll go ahead and remove the stencil, and look how pretty this is on the black cardstock. It actually gives a completely different look when it has that black in the background. That is so pretty. So you don't have to just stick to white or black cardstock. You can apply this Lunar Paste to any color cardstock that you want. And when you apply it to the different color of cardstock, again, the color does not change at all. It's just as vibrant as it is in the bottle. So here I'm using the scrapbook.com Scattered Hearts stencil, and I'm using a palette knife instead of a blending brush. So use a palette knife if you really want to get more of the Lunar Paste onto your stencil at once. And you still want to apply a pretty thin layer here. Just use the side of your palette knife to kind of scrape off some of that Lunar Paste, because you can reuse it and just put it back in the jar. Another tip that I have for you is just make sure that you are using your pixie spray when you use your palette knife to apply the Lunar Paste with stencils, because if the stencil is not fully adhered to that cardstock, you could end up with some Lunar Paste seeping underneath the openings of the stencil, and then those hearts wouldn't be as defined because you would have some of the Lunar Paste that seeped out beyond the heart openings of the stencil. So you can also apply Lunar Paste over ink. So here I'm taking a piece of the heavyweight white cardstock and applying some ink to the entire background. This is the Pink Flamingo ink from scrapbook.com. So after I've applied it to the entire background, I'm going to go ahead and add a stencil, and this stencil I'm using is the Daisy stencil from scrapbook.com, and here I'm applying some pixie spray off camera, and I am going to add the Lunar Paste. I'm going to start out with the Love Struck. I'm using an ink blending tool again, and I'm going to do kind of like an ombre look, because I'm going to apply half of it with the Love Struck, and then the other half of the stencil I'll apply the Breakup blue. And again, I'm applying a very thin layer with the ink blending tool. Now I'll remove the stencil, and you can see how pretty that looks on that ink blended background. Look at all of that shine. It's so pretty. So here I'm going to show you another way of adding your Lunar Paste, and this way I'm going to use the inks with the stencils. I'm using a 2-layer stencil from scrapbook.com. This one is the Heart Patterns stencil, but you can do this method with any layered stencil. So if you have a 2-layer or 3-layer, even a 4-layer stencil, this will work. However, I do suggest that if you're using Lunar Paste with a stencil, apply the ink to the first layer, or the first and second or even third layer, and then use your Lunar Paste as the very last layer. Now you can apply the Lunar Paste to any layer of the stencil. However, if it's the first layer that you're applying it to, you need to make sure that it's fully dry before adding the second stencil over top. So here I added the Candy Shop pink ink to the first layer, and then I removed that and then just put the second layer on, and I'm using a palette knife to add the Breakup blue Lunar Paste over all of those little heart patterns. And I'm really using the tip of that palette knife in order to get that lunar paste right into the openings of those stencils, because they are pretty small openings. So here, you can just use the tip of it to really get that in there, and just scrape off any excess with the side of your palette knife. Okay, so let's go ahead and remove this, and look how pretty that looks. You can see the ink, and you can also see the lunar paste on there. And I'm just going to set this aside to dry while I start to work on my next item here. So here I want to also show you that you can take your lunar paste and you can add it directly to your cardstock and create a really nice background with this. So here I'm just using an ink blending tool to apply it. You can see how nice and thin that goes on. I'm applying the Love Struck to the top, and then I'm cleaning off my palette knife, and I'm going to apply the Breakup blue towards the bottom. So you can really get a nice background that you can use on a card. You can take a background and you can apply it behind a background die or a cover plate to really add some color behind the cover plate. You can also create a background, let's say if you're creating a little outdoor scene and you wanted to have maybe a sky, you can use this Breakup blue as the sky, and then maybe put one of the green lunar paste towards the bottom for the grass and use that as a background. So you can apply it just like you would inks, but you can also use it with die cuts. And this particular background, once it's dry, I am going to use a die to cut out a certain portion of this background to use as a die cut. Look how pretty that is. So now let's take all of those backgrounds and turn them into cards. So I'm going to start with the Scattered Hearts stenciled background, and I'm using a pretty pink Posh die. This is the Eyelet rectangle die, and I die cut that background out of the rectangle die. I want to really define those scallop edges, so I'm going to use some ink just to ink them up. And I'm also using some of the scrapbook.com mint tape just to mask off the cardstock underneath that scalloped edge so that I don't get ink below it. And I'm going to do that on all four sides. This die actually has stitching all around the edges, so I'm just putting that mint tape right over that stitching line, and then I'm inking up that scallop border, and that just helps make this rectangle stand out a little bit more. Now I will say that when you add ink on top of the lunar paste, which you totally can do, but it kind of fades out the lunar paste a little bit, you can see there. So I'm just going to take a paper towel and just kind of buff it out and take some of that ink off the top. And once you do that, that lunar paste will shine again. So you can see it brings all that color back and takes some of that ink off the top of those hearts. So now I'm taking one of the scrapbook.com paper pads. This is the Pinks paper pad. It has lots of different pink colors in it, and it's A2 in size, which is perfect for an A2 size card. There are lighter color pinks and darker color pinks, and I was trying to find one that matched this Love Struck lunar paste as close as I could. So I'll go ahead and use this one here, and I'll put that in the background of my card layer there, and that'll look really pretty. So meanwhile, I'm going to use this mixed media paper from scrapbook.com, and I'm going to stamp an image. This is the Love Gnomes stamp set. I'm going to take one of these gnomes, and I'm going to stamp it down on this cardstock using my VersaFine Onyx black ink. And I'm going to be using my Zig Clean Color Real Brush pens to color this cute little gnome up. These pens are water-based pens, so they blend really nice on this mixed media paper pad. I'm going to use the Sugar Almond Pink for the hat. I'm just putting that Sugar Almond Pink right along the edges. And then I'm going to use my blender pen to blend that towards the center. I'm using the Carmine Red for the hearts on the hat, And I'm also going to use the blender to blend that color on the larger hearts at the bottom. The smaller hearts at the top, I just colored the whole thing in the carmine red, but the ones at the bottom, I'm giving it a little bit of shading. For his face, I'm using the flesh color. I'm just going to color the whole face in that flesh color. And then I'm going to come in with a little bit of a darker color. This is the mustard, and I'm just going to outline right underneath where the hat and the face meet. And then I'm going to use that flesh color and just blend the mustard down into the flesh color. And then I'm going to come back in with the blender and just blend that a little bit better. I'm also going to add some of the mustard right underneath his nose to add a little shadow there, and then blend that out. I'm going to add the flesh color to his hands, and they're so tiny that you don't need to do any blending there. I'm also going to color up his beard, and I'm using the pale gray for his beard. So I'm just coming up with a little bit of a flicking motion from the bottom of the beard up, and also from the top of the beard. And then I'm going to use the blender just to blend that a little bit. And I'm going to come back in with that same light gray and just add some more shading along the edges of that beard. And then I'll blend that out again. You can also use a water brush to do this if you don't have the blender marker. It does the same thing, only the blender marker has a blending solution in it. Okay, so next I'm going to color his pants in the carmine red, and I'm just giving it a little bit of shadow there between where the beard and the pants meet, just adding a little bit of that red marker, and then using the blender to blend that down towards the bottom of the pant leg. And then I'm going to come in with the cool gray 6 and add some shading there to his boots. This is a very dark gray, almost a black. So I just want to add just a little bit of that color at the top because it's such a deep color, it will give me some really good shading there. And I didn't want the boots to be too black because everything else is a very light color, so I wanted to keep it a much lighter gray. And then I'm going to color his sleeve in red on both sides, and then I'll color those hearts on that banner, and I'll alternate between the carmine red and the sugar almond pink. So one heart will be red and then the next heart will be pink, and I'll just use the blender to blend those colors to have a little bit of shading on those hearts. And then I'll use my scissors to fussy cut this cute little gnome out, and I'll be able to put him on my card. I'm also going to be bringing in the Pretty Pink Posh stitched hearts. I'm going to be taking 2 of the hearts from this set. Just die cut them out of the white cardstock, and I'm also going to be bringing in the Pretty Pink Posh Eyelet heart dies. There's 4 dies in this set, and I'll be using the second to the largest one, and I used one of the pink pieces of cardstock to die cut that out. On the white smaller heart, I stamped out a sentiment that says "Love you, Gnome, much," and I'm just inking up that heart in some of the spun sugar Distress Oxide ink. Now we'll just put all these layers together. So I'm adding the white heart to the eyelet heart, and then I'm going to add the smaller heart right to the center. I'll add the rectangle teal piece to the piece of pink cardstock, and then I'll add the heart on top. I'll add the gnome to the left side of the heart, and I'm just going to put a little piece of foam tape underneath his feet because he's not laying flat on the card, just because he's on top of 2 additional layers of cardstock there with those hearts. I'm adding this card layer to an A2 size card base, and then I'm going to finish up by adding some little pieces of pink heart clay confetti to the white heart. And that's going to complete this first card. For my next card, I'm going to use the Love You dies, and this die set also has a coordinating stamp set, but I'm just going to use the die set. I love this large sentiment word love. You can see it matches that stamp, but I'm going to take that background paper that I used to add the Lunar Paste to, and I'm going to die cut the word love right out of this background paper. Look how pretty this is, you guys. So you can take any die and die cut that background paper and have a really beautiful colored die cut. The background that I'm going to use is the Heart Patterns stenciled background, and I'm going to die cut it with the Pretty Pink Posh Stitch Torn Rectangle die. It gives you a really neat torn edge to the edge of that paper, and it also puts a really pretty stitching all inside of that edge. This love word die is going to fit perfectly on the front of that rectangle, and I die cut the shadow die out of some vellum. The vellum will just help to soften up the background of the word love. You can see if I just put it on top of the background right now, those hearts are really busy right around the word love, but if I add the word love to the piece of vellum, the vellum will help soften up all of the detail right around that word, and it will make the sentiment actually stand out so much more. So I put glue on the back of the die cut word, and I'm adding it to the vellum. And then when you add your vellum to your card, only add the glue to where the cardstock is showing on the back side of that die cut. Don't put any glue on the vellum where there's no cardstock, or otherwise you'll be able to see that glue right through the vellum. So I'm going to go ahead and add the word love to my card front, and then I took the word you, which also comes in that set, die cut it with a piece of gold mirror cardstock, and I'm going to add it right to the center of the word love. Next, I took another piece of gold mirror cardstock and I cut it down to 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. I did use a rectangle die to cut the center out so I can save that precious cardstock for another project. I'm adding that gold cardstock to an A2 size card base, and then I'll add my decorated layer right to the front. I love how this card turned out, and I also did another one very similar to this using the Daisy stencil, but the word love I die cut out of gold mirror cardstock, and then the word you I die cut out of the leftover cardstock that I added the Lunar Paste to. So that word you is from the Love Struck Lunar Paste. Next, I'm going to use the Rose Bloom stenciled background to make another card, and I'm bringing in my scrapbook.com layered roses dies. These dies match almost perfectly that stencil design on the Rose Bloom stencil, so that's why I chose to use these dies. And I'm bringing in my pinks cardstock and my Cools cardstock to die cut the background piece of the roses out of the pink and the blue cardstock. Then the layering die I die cut out of white cardstock, and I'm just adding the white detailed rose piece to the solid cardstock. So I have one pink rose and one blue rose, and I tried going with colors that matched as closely as I could find to the Lunar Paste that I was using. Those dies also have some leaves that are included, but I'm not going to use the leaves today. I didn't want to bring in any green. I just wanted to keep this with the pink and blue. So I also have a piece of white cardstock that I cut down to 2 1/4 by 3.5 inches. I'm going to add that to the center of my stenciled background, and I'm also going to put a sentiment in the bottom right-hand corner of that rectangular white piece of cardstock. The sentiment I'm using says "You are loved." This is a sentiment from the Pretty Pink Posh Valentine strips stamp set, and then I'm just going to add my roses to that white cardstock. I'm also going to add some foam to the back of that piece just so that it's popped up a little bit and has some dimension on that card panel, and I'll add it right to the center. I'll add that layer to another piece of white cardstock that I cut to 4 by 5 1/4, and then I'll add that to a piece of pattern paper that I took from the Playful Pattern Paper Pad from scrapbook.com. I'm using this blue paper, and I'm using the darker blue side, and I'm going to add my card layer to that. And the pattern paper I cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and then I'll just add that to an A2 size white card base. I'm going to bring in my pops of color. This is the Dusty Rose color, and I'm going to add a couple of the drops of the pops of color to the front of the card. And that completes this card. Oh my gosh, I love how that turned out. All of that pretty shine. So using my black panel, I went ahead and made another card very similar to the last one. You can see how pretty that looks on that black cardstock. And for the roses dies, instead of die cutting that detailed layer out of white cardstock, I die cut it out of black cardstock. I didn't add the roses to a rectangle piece of cardstock to the center like I did in the previous card because I didn't want to add any solid black cardstock to the front. I didn't want to take away from all of those bright colors on that card. And I also added a word die from the Hugs Love You die set. I think that card turned out so pretty. So once again, here are all the cards that I made with the brand new Lunar Paste from Simon Hurley. If you're interested in any of the products shown today, please check the description box of this YouTube video for product links, as well as on my blog at lisamearsdesigns.com. And I always appreciate when you use my links because it does help support me and my YouTube channel. If you had a favorite card today, I would love to hear that in the comments. And if you like this video, please click that thumbs up button, and if you like videos like this, be sure to click that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day. Bye-bye.